What's up, everybody? So UFC Macau just wrapped up, and Song Yadong comes through for China and gets the job done by submitting Deiveson Figueiredo in round number 2. And if it was not for Song, I mean, on this card, China was terrible. They were 0-7 leading up to the main event, and of course, Song came through just like a lot of us anticipated he would. Now, him submitting Deiveson, wildly impressive. Kind of caught me off guard, right? Because out of all of the outcomes of how this fight would go, I would say that would probably be the least likely outcome. So that's just how crazy MMA has been recently, especially here in 2026. We'll talk a lot about the main event. We'll go through every other fight that went down on this card because this card was wildly entertaining, man. And some of the fights, maybe not the most high level, but coming into fight week, right? When I did my predictions video, I'm like, these are a lot of really interesting matchups stylistically, and I figured that this was going to be a very entertaining card. It absolutely delivered. I really enjoyed waking up early, checking out this card, watching these fights, man, because tons of finishes, tons of action. Really, really enjoyed it. But listen, Song Yadong, there were a lot of people all week, right, whenever this fight was booked, and everyone's like, why did the UFC book this fight, man? They could have done Song Yadong versus Peyton Talbot. They could have done Song Yadong wherever. Dude, this isn't some sort of crazy, we're not doing algebra here. This isn't geometry. This isn't some wild expression, some equation that no one can figure out. This is, you don't need to be a genius. The UFC, in my opinion, had doubts about how many fighters from China were going to win on this card. Look at the representation that China has in the UFC. How many are high-level fighters? What, Song and Wei Li? Outside of that, now that the Leech is, I think he's retired, or at least he hasn't fought in a while. He might have been retired, right? The legend, the Leech. Outside of that, like, they're not very good. And you saw that on this card. So you can't just pull up to Macau and have China just stink it up, man. You need fighters to actually go out there and rack up some wins. That's what the UFC does when they go to Australia, when they go to Brazil, whatever the case may be. They like to kind of force feed these matchups, throw a lot of these guys bones in order to be able to get them a win in the hometown. That's, to me, what this main event was about. It was about Song Yadong essentially getting a free win. Now, obviously, having said that, Deiveson Figueiredo was not a layup, but the fact of where he is in his career is a little bit more on the wash side, right? We see some moments where he does look explosive, but to me, the fact was this was about a showcase opportunity for Song Yadong. The dude is 28 years of age. He's been in there with some of the best guys in the bantamweight division, and he's been taking rounds off of some of the best fighters in the world. Corey Sandhagen, Piotr Jan, Sean O'Malley. He's been in very competitive fights with these guys, man. Obviously a step behind because one of the problems with Song is he doesn't necessarily have that, elite X factor type of trait, which is why he's kind of like what I've been saying is like the Arnold Allen of the bantamweight division. Very good, very well-rounded, very technical, very skilled, but it's just a little bit of a step behind the guys like a Jan, like an O'Malley, like a Corey Sandhagen and Umar. Like, you get the point. Right, and then Marab, obviously. So this, to me, was all about Song getting a win. And that's exactly what happened. Song pulled through, man. And him getting a submission victory, like I was saying, is surprising to me. Because I think that this was Song's first submission in the UFC, right? He's had submissions earlier on in his career. But, his jiu-jitsu's solid, but it's more about his wrestling and his striking on the feet. He's got good boxing, right? I saw Rudy Hernandez in the corner, the cut man, right? Which was kind of cool with bringing the boxing knowledge to the table. And Song looked pretty crisp on the feet. Now, I will say this. I was a little bit worried after what I saw in the first round, right? It was kind of a feel-out round. Song's kind of spamming some leg kicks from range. Deiveson came out southpaw, which I thought was interesting, right? Trying to blast the kicks to the body, maybe look for that check hook around the guard because we know that, Deiveson's got a ton of power in that right hand. But, so I was a little bit worried, actually. After seeing the first round, I'm like, oh, man, don't tell me Song's about to drop the ball here. But round 2, Song starts to pick it up. He's picking his shots well, just kind of picking and poking with the kicks from range, landing some good right hands in close, right? Got taken down at the end of the first round where I'm like, if I could see Deiveson winning this fight, I didn't think he would knock out Song. We know how durable Song is, but it would be the grappling that Deiveson could bring to the table that could possibly trouble Song, even though we know Song is good takedown defense. And as soon as Deiveson shot in for that takedown, and I saw Song. I could see him setting it up, and then the little detail that just solidified him locking in that guillotine was when Deiveson shot in, he recognized Song was going to try to jump it, and he was trying to pass over the leg and try to get out of Song being able to wrap up his guard, and then Song was able to block the leg, wrap up the guillotine, and was able to get him out of there. Hey, man, don't be silly, jump the gilly. Song Yadong submitting Deiveson Figueiredo to me is very surprising. So it just was one of those things coming into this fight. We've seen that Deiveson still is kind of good, but in a way, a shell of himself. We've seen that, man, right? Kind of scraping by Montel Jackson. We saw what Barcelos was able to do to Jackson. He beat him more impressive than Deiveson did Barcelos. So it's one of those things, man, where Figueiredo, a legend, I look at it at least, right? Especially of the flyweight division, one of the better flyweights that we've seen. He's had some success at bantamweight, but it was one of those things. If you look at the fights against Umar, the fights against, Corey, I know he got injured, in the 50-50 position, hurt his knee, against Jan. He was just getting outclassed by these guys. There were really, he'd land a shot here or there, stop a takedown here or there, but there were really not many moments where Song was out there having moments and winning rounds against some of the best guys in the world. So this, to me, not some sort of crazy math equation as to why the UFC put this fight together. It's very clear. And people were acting like it was weird because Song was ranked 5 and wasn't Figueiredo ranked 7. So it's not a weird booking. To me, this is all about doing what they could to make sure that Song could get a win in China. And you saw Zhang Mingyang absolutely drop the ball against Johnny Walker. So it felt like they were like, we're not going to have Zhang, fight again in a headliner and drop the ball. He got fraud checked by Johnny Walker. And turns out, I think the UFC saw something there because look what happened to Zhang Mingyang in the co-main event, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this should have been a win for Song. He was a massive favorite for a reason. This was his fight to lose. He's 28, in the prime of his career, making rapid improvements. Deiveson clearly on the way out, and I think that the end is near for him in terms of his MMA career. Looks like a shell of himself. He's got power. He's got some solid movement, but I don't know. The output is low. Doesn't look like the same guy to me, but it's not to take anything away from Song. I mean, Song's really, really good. So even like a prime Figueiredo, I think it's a more competitive fight. And listen, Figueiredo won the first round. So people can say what they want about, Deiveson doesn't look like the same guy. Still went out there, won the first round, had some moments, but then Song able to lock up the guillotine, was getting the better of the striking exchanges on the feet, was faster, more powerful, ripping those right hands in close. Should have been a win for Song. Goes out there, gets the job done, and avoids China getting skunked on this card, man, because outside of Song, like I was saying, I think every other fighter that was repping China lost. So good win for Song. What he does next, I mean, I'm not quite sure, right? Because he's fought some of the best guys in the world, but I mean, Song's one of those dudes. He'll fight anybody. So in terms of a matchup off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure. I know people wanted the Talbot fight, but Song fought back here, so maybe he fights ahead. Maybe he's looking at a potential rematch. Maybe he gets the winner of Sandhagen versus Bautista. I'm not quite sure. I think that there's some options for him. Song, one of the best guys in this division, just to me, a step below those really elite guys that he would have to get through in order to win the title. But Song's a baller, man. Great win. Zhang Mingyang versus Alonzo Menifield. This is, in my opinion, one of the reasons. Now, obviously, because Song was available and the calendar and the way that the UFC was kind of able to book out the fights, right? It's one of those things where I think that they looked at Song headlining, and a lot of that I think had to do with, one, Song's a big star. It's in Macau. It's the perfect opportunity for him to headline a card, but I feel like they watched Zhang Mingyang go out there and fumble against Johnny Walker miserably. He had never seen a calf kick before, and that was like, we gave you maybe the chinniest dude on the entire roster, at least one of them, and you just couldn't find a whistling shot to go through the guard of Walker and slump him out? Like, everyone dang near in the world thought that Zhang was going to win that fight, and it didn't happen. And then it's like, okay, wait a minute here. Do we have a fraud? That was a fraud check. And then it's like, well, is he actually a fraud, or can he put things together and be a little bit better? And then he comes out here, and once again, Alonzo Menifield comes through. And I thought Zhang Mingyang could find a way to get it done, man. To go out here against Menifield, I think Menifield is better than what a lot of people want to give him credit for, but he's not a world beater. He's a very beatable guy. You saw Zhang land some good shots in close, some good knees, some good elbows. All he had to do was stay technical and pick at Menifield and frustrate him, and he couldn't do that. So to me, Zhang Mingyang, officially a fraud. A guy that had a bunch of hype, what is it, 100% finishing rate or something close to that at least, most of his fights. If he wins, he's getting a stoppage. this was a fight that he could go out there and win. And the reality is Menifield just better, just a better fighter, was calmer, poised, even when he got hit, didn't phase him where you could see Zhang. And I think a lot of it was him just trying to control his breathing, but he's like, I don't know, man. I just feel like Zhang Mingyang is just, he's not that good. That's the reality. We thought he could beat Walker. I guess the signs were there. Menifield putting together a good performance, stayed calm, composed, attacked the legs. Mingyang made zero adjustments for addressing leg kicks, which is a disgrace. And then Menifield landing some big shots. The right hand around the guard, uppercut up the middle, was able to put Zhang Mingyang away. Zhang Mingyang fraud checked to the utmost degree, one of the most overrated, hyped up guys that I think we've seen in a long time. The hype does not match the skill, clearly. Great win for Alonzo Menifield, playing spoiler at UFC Macau. Good win for Alonzo Menifield, man. He's very dangerous. He's got power. If you get clipped by Menifield, he can put anyone away in this weight class. Zhang Mingyang, complete fraud, man. Sergey Pavlovich, Tallison, Teixeira. We all knew Sergey was going to win this fight, and I said first round KO. And listen, Tallison, Teixeira, in my opinion, people were like, well, why'd the UFC book this fight? What has Teixeira done to keep getting these opportunities? This was literally the UFC saying, F you, Tallison, for that last performance. That's what I was saying. When he went out there against Tai Tuivasa and was flopping around on the deck like a wet seal, him and Tuivasa rolling around, blubbing it up, that was a disgrace. That was embarrassing. And not to say that Tuivasa's most recent fight against Sutherland was any better, but still, like when you look at Tallison, he's this tall Brazilian striker, and sometimes the punches look clean. Had that nasty KO on DWCS, marches across the cage, boom, hits Tafel with a nasty elbow on the main card, right? So they were clearly pushing him, right? You could say early stoppage against Lewis. I still think that, he gets knocked out regardless, especially what we know now. And then that disgrace of a performance against Tuivasa, I think that they were like, nah, man, you got to pay for that. We're putting you in there with the fridge, Sergey Pavlovich. And listen, this was an important win for Pavlovich, not only to just win, because I feel like we all knew he was going to win, but to get that KO. Because I think it had been like 2-3 years since Pav had gotten a KO. And, you guys know he's my favorite heavyweight. And, well, now that we got Poatan moving up to heavyweight, I guess it's Poatan. But the guy that's been in the heavyweight division, it's Pavlovich, the fridge. And outside of, getting clipped by Aspinall, and we know how good Aspinall is, right? And getting kind of picked apart by Volkov, and there was that familiarity there because they train together. Pavlovich has been unstoppable, running through dudes, man. And I think that he has some of the best boxing, if not the best overall boxing in this weight class. And I know Aspinall's fast and gone, and they're flashier, but when it comes to the combos and, the uppercuts and the hooks and the way that he threw that right hand right around that long guard of Tallison Teixeira upstairs, who has that tall man defense, it was just bound to happen, man. Like, Pavlovich, completely different level than Teixeira. Teixeira, grappled against Tuivasa, was not going to out-grapple Pavlovich. If anyone had the grappling advantage here, it was Sergey. He's better everywhere. I figured maybe Tallison could jab and, leg kick from range and whatever, but he doesn't have a very good jab to begin with, and that's really how you can kind of trouble Pavlovich is struggling. Pavlovich will struggle to get to the inside and work his way in the box, which is what Volkov kept doing, but Teixeira doesn't have those skills, man. He's a, he could beat some of the blobs out there, but he kind of is a blob himself, just disguised in a little bit of a taller frame that doesn't look as blob-ish. So Pavlovich was always going to win this fight. As I said, a Hunger Games type of fight. After this happened, rumor has it, a cannon sounded somewhere. Boom. Down goes Tallison Teixeira, man, as expected. Kai Asakura, Cameron Smotherman. Listen, man, Kai Asakura was a guy that I was unbelievably hyped that the UFC signed. I watched him over in Ryzen, right? Has a win over Kyoji Horiguchi, a win over Manel Kape. And look, he came into the UFC, and I didn't like him at flyweight. I just didn't like him at flyweight in the UFC. And look how massive he was at bantamweight compared to Cameron Smotherman. Absolutely massive. And it's like one of those things where you could just hear Rogan now, how in the world did he ever make 125, man? Like, that's what I was thinking the entire time. Like how did Asakura make flyweight? And you sit there and you go, well, he lost to Tim Elliott. He lost to Pantoja. Okay, well, if the UFC is going to give you a title shot right off the rip, if they would have given Asakura a heavyweight title shot, he would be like, sure, man, free title fight. In my debut, I'm taking it. But the reality is, as soon as he lost to Pantoja, he should have moved right back up, right? And he had moments on the feet against Pantoja, had moments on the feet against Tim Elliott, but it was the grappling edge that those guys had, right? And that was where he had problems, was his takedown defense, and especially draining yourself that much to get down to 125 ain't going to help. I'm not saying that he beats those guys because they're significantly better grapplers than Kai, But on the feet, man, Kai Asakura can hang with just about anybody. Now, up the weight class against, like a guy like Petr Yan, like, man, that would... I'm not saying that he beats these guys, man. I think Petr Yan and O'Malley and Umar, I mean, these guys are the best strikers in this weight class, technicality-wise and overall, I think. But Asakura, he just might be the most explosive striker in this weight class, at least one of, right? And you got to see it on display. I know people are going to say, man, you're glazing him because he beat Cameron Smotherman, who fainted at the last weigh-ins, and he's not even really, UFC ready per se. And that's kind of what I said coming into this fight. This was the UFC throwing a bone to Kai Asakura, saying, here's the layup, dude. Just don't whiff. Don't miss. Right off the backboard, Wemby coming in, slamming it in with two hands. Like, be secure, man. Two hands. Don't try to show off too much with a one-handed jam. Use two. And that's what Asakura did. He said, I got two hands, man. Bang. And went out there and put on just an explosive showing, man. I mean, he looks so good. And that's the thing about Kai is people were like, man, maybe this guy is a fraud. He's not a fraud. If you're going to go out there and strike with Kai, you're in trouble. Because maybe he's not the most technical overall guy, but he was drilling that right hand to the body to where he then feinted it, stepped in, and threw that right hand, stepped through right around the guard and hurt Smotherman bad. And with some of the follow-up shots, put him out badly, man. And I kind of feel bad for Smotherman because this was one of those fights where coming off of where he feinted and fell and hit his head. Like, that was a disaster, man. That was not good. And that's one of the things I'm like, how's he going to come back from that? And then given stylistically, he was outmatched here. Kai's way faster, way more explosive, looked much bigger than him. And Smotherman was basically a sacrificial lamb here for Asakura to get his first UFC win. Super happy for Kai, man. I'm a big fan of this guy. I love his style. He's flashy. He's got a massive following on YouTube, man. This guy's a superstar over in Japan and in general. I think that he's one of the big stars that the UFC can build moving forward. So happy he's in the UFC. Happy he was able to get a win. Great showing by Kai Asakura. Devastating knockout in a completely one-sided fight. And we got this one right. First round KO for the explosive Kai Asakura. Happy for the dude, man. Jake Matthews, Carlston Harris. So let me be positive to begin this. Dominant performance by Jake Matthews, completely one-sided. Harris had basically no moments in this fight whatsoever. However, Jake Matthews is one of the just most disappointing fighters, I think, in UFC history. This guy has skills, man. He has solid striking, a solid ground game. And when you watch him fight, you see from fight to fight, one fight, you're like, man, this guy's like, he looks like he could be a solid ranked fighter. And then the next fight, you're like, how's he in the UFC? Cut him. Get him out of here. Get him out of our sight. And this was one of those fights where, yeah, it was dominant, but it's like, dog, you're in there with Carlston Harris, who took this fight on short notice, is completely washed, a shell of himself, has not been the same guy since the Shavkat fight, in my opinion. Has been in there just having, he's had some moments, right? He still has some power and his ground game's still okay. I get all of it, but it was short notice. Jake Matthews, you were supposed to fight Muslim Salikov, and I thought Carlston Harris was a much easier fight. And yeah, he dominated, but he should have gotten a finish. And I know that he almost could have had a finish. I understand that. I know I'm being hard on Jake Matthews here, man, but this should have been a finish. Carlston Harris, this was a layup. And it just feels like the UFC's trying to give Matthews these, well, I shouldn't even say that because now that I think about it, Chidi and Njokuani's a tough fight. Neil Magny's a tricky fight. The legend of the welterweight division, Neil Magny, man. But, there's been some fights at least that Matthews is coming in. You're like, man, he's just going to look good in this. And he just doesn't. And this fight, he did look good. I'm not saying he didn't look good. I just expected him. I ultimately picked him by decision and then said I wouldn't be surprised if he wins a KO. Or maybe I did pick him by KO. I can't remember. Either way, pick Matthews to win easily. He did win easily. Don't get me wrong. But Carlston Harris, he didn't even look like a UFC caliber fighter out there to me, man. At all. And the fact that it went the distance, and yes, one-sided, but a little bit disappointing in my eyes when it comes to Jake Matthews. And you know who Jake Matthews kind of reminds me of a little bit? Jacob Malkoun. Two guys that have the skills, but the UFC's almost trying to give them these matchups to showcase and get a finish. And I know you could say, well, whoa. The Neil Magny fight, look what he did to Njokuani, all impressive. But that's my point. How do you submit Njokuani? How do you do what you did against Neil Magny and then against Carlston Harris? You don't finish him. So I guess gritty by Harris to get it done, but by the same token, man, kind of disappointing from Matthews. Listen, I'm hard on Jake Matthews because I think the guy's skilled. He's just so up and down. But at the end of the day, I don't want to complain too much about it because it was dominant. It was a good performance in that aspect. But to me, come on, man. You got to finish this guy at this spot, a guy that didn't even look like UFC caliber, in my opinion. So just want to be critical there, because outside of that, I mean, it was a dominant performance, but I can't help but feel like he should have easily gotten him out of there. Alex Perez, Sumudaerji, man, this was such an unfortunate way for this fight to go down, right? To get stopped. Sumudaerji, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, his second low blow of the fight. I feel like there was one in the first round maybe or something like that. But either way, the low blow, obviously we're not Alex Perez. It kind of flicked, the area, you know what I'm saying? And Perez is a dog, man. This is a guy that I think he won the first round on the scorecards, or at least a couple of the cards, right? So to say that he was looking for a way out, I don't agree with that, man. I don't agree with that. Brought the bucket in, kind of leaning over, puking, or I don't know what was, if anything was coming out. I don't know. Bisping was saying that nothing was coming out. He was just kind of, some of the saliva was coming out, whatever he was saying. I don't know. The bottom line is, I don't think Perez was really looking for a way out. This is a guy that has been in there fighting the who's who. He's been in there with some of the best guys in the world, man. So I'm not going to say something like that for a guy like Perez. But, when you watch the replay, it's like, we're not Perez, so I don't know. You get hit in the nuts, man. Like that, it sucks, right? So every nut shot's different, all that kind of stuff. But overall, bottom line is Sumudaerji is the one that threw the low blow. So don't put it in that position to begin with. Perez couldn't continue. Perez is a dog. I don't think he was looking for a way out, despite what people want to say. It's unfortunate because Sumudaerji, I felt like the tides were starting to turn, but also Sumudaerji was, searching for that finish. Looked like he was maybe going to get Perez out of there. Then he started to slow down a little bit. Then we get the low blow. So the fight was getting good. I think it was going to be 1-1 heading into the third, to where it would have been anyone's fight. So hopefully the UFC can rebook this one and get this going again, because that was a really, really good fight. So I thought Sumudaerji would be able to get it done on the cards, and it was looking like a super competitive fight, good back and forth, very unfortunate ending. But Perez, to me, one of these guys where if you want to say, man, he was looking for a way out, the fight wasn't going his way. Sumudaerji was slowing down. Perez won the first round. And I don't know about all that, man. I think Perez is a dog, so I'm not going to say something like that about him. Yisak Lee versus Luis Felipe Diaz. I mean, we all kind of knew how this fight was going to go down. Felipe Diaz, I picked him by, I think, a second-round submission, and didn't even need to go that far. Didn't even need to work in the ground game, really. Just marched down Lee. Lee just absolutely looking not UFC caliber whatsoever. And got destroyed. Luis Felipe Diaz, man, is a unit. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful, he hits really hard, marches you down with almost no respect. You have to have something to gain the respect of this guy to keep him off of you, right? You got to have some sort of, power on the feet. You got to have some sort of technique to be able to sting him and get him off of you, or a good ground game to be able to take him down and put him in a bad position. So if you don't have those things, Diaz is just going to be an offensive juggernaut, walk forward, have no respect for your skills, and get you out of there. Landed some big shots, was able to get him out of there. Good performance by Diaz to get it done after a finish on DWCS. I think this was his UFC debut, if I'm not mistaken. Good win for Diaz. This was a layup, in my opinion. Meng Ding versus Jose Souza. Now, I picked Jose Souza to win this fight, but I was hoping Ding Ding could go ding ding. I was hoping that he could find a big shot and put on a great performance. But, he was landing a lot of really good leg kicks, right? And I thought he took the first round, but then after that, I gave Souza rounds 2 and 3. And I know it was a close fight, and people are up in arms saying, man, this was a robbery. It wasn't a robbery. First of all, close fights are not robberies. And second, it was pretty clear that Souza won round 2 and 3. Now, were they close? Absolutely. But outside of Meng landing like one big right hand somewhere in the fight, obliterating Souza's legs, especially in the first round, and then after, Souza was switching stances, so Meng was just attacking his legs. Souza was rolling with a lot of these shots, man. Like, he was defending really, really well. Like, he was just kind of rolling. Shots were hitting the shoulders, off of his arms. Like, defensively, he was really good. And Ding looked like the one that got sent through the wood chipper. He was the one all busted up, because Souza landed a massive straight right hand down the middle that rocked Meng in the first round. And then in the second round, I think it was a knee. And then the third round, it was an elbow, right? Or something like that, right? He was landing some really, really good shots. And that's why I picked Souza to win this fight. Very technical, good, straight, sharp, punches down the middle, good elbows, good knees. And to me, it was just a more well-rounded guy. But Ding's tough, man. He put on a good showing. This was an action-packed fight, good back and forth. I know Souza was just kind of running around in there, sticking and moving, but did what he had to do to win the fight. I don't think it should have been a split decision. It was a close fight, But I thought it was pretty clear that Souza won rounds 2 and 3. And I know one of the cards, I think, said 30-27 for Souza, which a little bit crazy to me. I thought that Meng won that round considering the damage he did with the leg kicks. But I feel like that big right hand that rocked Meng in that first round, maybe that is what that judge took into account. But I thought it was rounds 2 and 3 went to Souza. He was just a cleaner puncher, cleaner striker. And I think he's got some skills, man. That's why I picked him in this fight, right? He's very young. I think he's like 24. His last loss was when DWCS, I believe, right, where he got KO'd late. Came back, won a couple fights on the regional scene, put on some impressive performances. He's got some skills. Got to learn how to deal with leg kicks because especially with that tall man frame, guys are going to go after his legs, which was a smart plan by Meng, but got to deal with the leg kicks. But overall, I think Souza actually has some skills, and I think he clearly won this fight, man. I think he's a good fighter, actually. Arichi Long versus Cody Haddon. Listen, I picked Cody Haddon to win this fight. I thought he would win by a decision, but as I mentioned, would not be surprised if he got a second-round stoppage. And the reason that I leaned decision was because Haddon had been out for almost 2 years, so I'm like, maybe there'll be some ring rust here. Maybe, none of it. None of it whatsoever. And Cody Haddon, first of all, given what we've seen, I think he would have destroyed Malcolm Wellmaker. He would have dominated him. That's number one. Number two, Cody Haddon is one of the best prospects in all of MMA right now. Because I know Richie Long is not like a world beater, but we just saw him knock out Gibson just a fight ago. He's very explosive early, a ton of experience, nasty power early, and Haddon dominated him. And that's what we've seen from Cody Haddon, man. This guy's got sharp striking, very good boxing, a nasty ground game. So he's a complete fighter. He's good everywhere. And what I really like about Cody's game is his shot selection. Mixes shots to the body so well. Or rip the boxing combos to the body. You saw, him get into the clinch, push, Richie Long up against the octagon side, land those knees to the body and was able to fold him. Really, really good work by Cody Haddon, man. And when you see a young fighter that picks at the body, picks his shots so well, is so poised and so calm in there to be away, coming off the injury, I didn't have questions that Cody Haddon was going to win this fight. I had questions about how easy he would or would not make this look, considering that there was a little bit of a layoff. This was a one-sided beatdown from Cody Haddon. Masterclass type of performance. One of the best prospects in all of MMA, man. He's very, very good. I like what I'm seeing from Cody Haddon. Great win. Ray Tsuruya, Luis Gurule. Early prediction, I said Luis Gurule because right before I recorded the video, they made this fight announcement. I was like, I think Gurule's actually a tougher matchup than Jesus Aguilar. But later in the week, we flipped the pick to Ray Tsuruya because I'm like, listen, man, Ray Tsuruya, his only loss was to Joshua Van. And it's like, are we saying that Gurule is going to be able to stuff the takedowns and do what Van did? Absolutely not, right? So I came back to reality with that one. And then also the fact that Ray is very, very young, took about a year off or so. And we've seen a lot of these fighters that have all the potential in the world that maybe there's some areas like on the feet, there were some areas, the gas tank, maybe a little bit of a problem, right? So areas of weakness. Takes a year away, right? I think he was working with Henry Cejudo a little bit, traveling around, getting some work in, came back and looked so improved. We see very young fighters burst onto the scene where they have the potential, they have the skill, but then they go and they like hone in on some things and they really come back very, very improved. And that's what we saw from Ray Tsuruya because Luis had, I know he's flying across the world to China, short notice. He just fought against Bars. He had a good performance. He had a very good performance. But the bottom line is Ray Tsuruya is a very high-level grappler because Gurule has solid grappling of his own. Right? Nick Piccinini, who's a high-level wrestler, took down Luis on the Contender Series basically at will. But one of the reasons I was like, Tsuruya is going to win this fight is because he's got really good jiu-jitsu and he can not only take down Gurule, but then keep him there. So to go out there, get the round one submission, very, very impressive by Ray Tsuruya. Ran him over, dominant performance, looked sharper on the feet as well. Ray Tsuruya is going to be a problem in this weight class. And once again, flyweight, loaded, man. Absolutely loaded. I think that, was this at, it was at bantamweight maybe because it was short notice for Gurule. So I anticipate Tsuruya will be at flyweight. So, yeah. I like him in the weight class, man. He's big, he's strong, great grappler. Angela Hill, Xiong, Jingnan. I mean, Jingnan, what a fraud check this was, man. Listen, Jingnan, it's not that she was so great. Like she had good boxing and solid striking, was a champion over in one, but how dog shit are they over there, I guess, especially for WMMA? Because listen, Angela Hill's one of those where I said that I thought this would be a competitive fight. I'm not counting out Hill, but I was going to side with Xiong because of the damage, and it turns out Angela Hill's the one that did all the damage. I mean, Jingnan was, emoting and, taunting the whole time. And it's like, what are you doing? You're getting the break speed off of you. You're getting outscored. You're getting dominated in every aspect of MMA. So this was one of those things where in heavyweight and WMMA, I don't, in a lot of the other weight classes, I'm like, they're making their UFC debut, coming over from Bellator or whatever. There's very few guys, like a Yaroslav Amosov. I'm like, no, I'll pick him in his debut. But outside of that, many of the guys I just kind of fade. And there's been a lot of success, right? We've seen the one-offs with Chandler, MVP. It's not all of them, but we see a lot of these fighters come over, and they just get kind of checked. And this was a perfect example. But in WMMA, I kind of throw that rule out the window because it's WMMA. And, it's like how huge can the gap really be between a 41-year-old Angela Hill and a 38-year-old, Xiong, who's been a champion, who's got some solid boxing. And her boxing, it really isn't even that good. It's really not that good. She loads up, wings, punches. Her defense isn't good, doesn't move her head. Angela Hill beat the brakes off of her. Vintage OG Angela Hill type of performance. Got the pick wrong, but happy for Angela Hill to get the job done at 41. Still looking very, very sharp. Output always on point. Cardio always there. Looked in great physical condition. Good win for Angela Hill, man. Destroyed her. Kaji Zhu versus Rodrigo Vera. We picked Rodrigo Vera to win this fight. Now, I didn't think it would look this easy, right? So that's kind of the surprising fact to me, but I guess that's why this dude did not go through on the Ultimate Fighter, because remember, it was like, well, he was supposed to be on the Ultimate Fighter, and then he got, thrown in here on short notice, and I feel like maybe that was, they saw this guy training, and they were like, wait a minute, this guy shouldn't be on this show. This is a guy that can fight in the UFC right away, and then when they saw Juan Diaz do what he did on DWCS, go out there and pull off the upset against Malcolm Wellmaker, they're like, wait a minute, this guy has a win over Juan Diaz, who just beat Wellmaker, who's a dangerous power puncher, and Diaz is really good. This is the only guy to beat Diaz? Nah, man, bypass tough, throw him in here, and he absolutely destroyed Zhu, man. Dangerous on the feet. He's got a solid ground game. He can submit you, nasty ground and pound, has the power and the output on the feet. Absolutely ran him over. Great performance by Rodrigo Vera. Felt confident picking him. Method of victory, didn't feel very confident given that we haven't seen him at this level. But I had a lot of confidence he was going to win this fight, man, because he's a very, very skilled fighter. Dominant win. Last but not least, Loma Lukbume versus Jacqueline Amorim. This was one of those fights, man. I said that I had low confidence in my original pick with this because it was one of those fights where it's like, whoever you pick, the outcome, you know what the outcomes are going to be for this fight. It was either Loma by decision or Jacqueline by an early sub. And it's like, whatever one you pick, if you get it wrong, it's going to be like, you look like an idiot, but you knew that it would go the other way. And that was this fight, man. And that's kind of what we discussed. And I feel like a lot of people knew. It was going to be Loma, was going to have the advantage on the feet. She's got solid Muay Thai, not very dangerous, which I figured would be a little bit of a problem considering that Amorim does kind of awkwardly have more power on the feet, but it's her jiu-jitsu skills, man. High-level jiu-jitsu. She had a horrible performance her last outing. Her gas tank has always been suspect, but in that first round, you will battle adversity, and we've seen Loma submitted in the past, but her grappling defense has gotten a little bit better. We saw it against Thayanara, who's a juggernaut, will move forward. She's big and strong for the weight class. I just figured that Lukbume could survive the first round and then be able to outdamage and outland Amorim in rounds 2 and 3 to get the job done. So had no doubt Amorim would win the first round, and if she was going to win, I thought it would be by submission. I just thought Loma would be able to fend off the onslaught of Amorim on the ground early and be able to outland her on the feet. So great win by Amorim. She's very fun to watch. I like watching her fight. I like watching a high-level submission ace at work. Her power on the feet is actually a little bit underrated, even though her striking is not very good. And again, the fight didn't drag out, so we didn't get to see if there were any improvements in the gas tank. But she's one of the very few consistent finishers in WMMA. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Beta Mosquito, right? With their styles, the striking starting to come along, and then their jiu-jitsu so high level that if they could get you down, it is going to be a world of problems. So that's UFC Macau, man. I actually really enjoyed this card. I enjoyed waking up early, catching up on some of the fights, and then checking out the card, man. There were a lot of entertaining fights. A lot of the fights, maybe, some of them not the most high level, but man, rough for China on this card. And that's what I kind of figured coming in. I was looking at some of the matchups, and I'm like, these are winnable fights. But some of the fighters that, they got matched up with, I'm like, this is going to be a tough night. at the office, and turns out that it ended up being just that. And I feel like the UFC knew the last time I think that they went to China, Zhang was the main event, and he completely shit the bed. They bring Song, they break out the big guns, they know Song Yadong is legit, goes out there and beats up on Deiveson Figueiredo after dropping the first round. I thought Figueiredo won that first round probably, right? And then Song puts it on him, gets him out of there with a submission, Team Alpha Male special, dive head first on the hip, lock in the guillotine, get you out of there. So great win by Song. Happy for him. I really like watching Song fight. Card was very entertaining. If you guys enjoyed this video, do me a favor. Please give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. I will see you next time.